After the training session, one of them went to their boot to get, like, I think it was a bottle of mace and a baseball bat because he was going to kill him. He might have died. There was a guy who got caught for steroids, 10-week ban. Then he came back in and scored in the playoffs and his team made it to the finals. So I was like, no, I'm not having this. I want to name him, but I can't name him because he's technically a criminal.
Ask Nedum Onuoha questions footballers are too scared to answer.
Let's go. Oh, to be fair, you say too scared to answer. People never ask them.
YP2KK asks, how much do players really care about criticism online or by media? And kind of within that, how did you kind of cope with
that?
Yeah, sort of self-esteem and validation.
So I think I made my debut in 2004, which feels like a lifetime ago. And for maybe to some listeners of the pod, that is literally a lifetime ago.
Let's not hover on that.
Yeah, let's move on from that. And at that time, feedback would be given from like the newspapers. Because it's the local newspaper. Like when I was in Manchester, it's the Manchester Evening News, and they'll be doing the play ratings. They'll be talking about players they think are good, bad, and then it's the message boards. They were the places where you needed to go if you wanted to know what the feel was.
And would you?
As a young person, I used to, yeah. I used to. But then I realised that with the play ratings and stuff, you mentioned before about the biases type thing, and I see it now, to be fair, as well. If somebody ever says to me, I'm looking forward to watching player X, it means that that's kind of what they'll be focusing on.
Right.
And when you think about the fact they've got to rate like 22 players or whatever or more, they're not really paying attention to the little things.
Yeah.
Like they're not really watching the game. And to be fair, that's the way that everybody is in terms of how you watch football. Like even if you're a fan of your club, you're not going to watch anything the other team are doing. You're looking at how your team is being affected by it.
Yeah. Also, maybe as a right back or a centre back, you'll be judged on mistakes more than
Mate, even if you conceded, you could have a great game.
Yeah.
But your team conceded two.
Yeah.
And obviously that's your fault.
Yeah, you can't get above a 6 now.
Yeah, above a 6 after conceding 2. Right, you're pushing 4s, 5s at that point. And I thought this isn't right. And I got so frustrated that in time I ended up just not speaking to this guy that used to give the ratings or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And then as I got older, here's the emergence of social media and access to fans in a good way, but then sometimes fans in a bad way, because they're very keen to let you know how bad you are, especially being at the time, one of the first relegation season with QPR. Listen, everyone wanted to tell me how bad I was and how bad everything was.
Right. Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? That's very helpful. You know what I mean? Like, I support this club and you're a disaster. Please figure this out.
Yeah.
No worries. Do you know what? I'd never thought about that before.
But their bias is it's literally the scoreline.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. You can play terribly.
Yeah.
If you sneak a win, no
100%.
one cares.
So as I got older, my social media account's private and I don't check for it. I don't really engage with games on a week-to-week basis, rather.
How old were you at this point, do you think?
This was 2013, so I was like mid-20s.
Mm-hmm.
This is literally a year after being at QPR. And it got to a point where I said, this isn't for me, to be honest.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm not that guy that says, I'm looking forward to this game this weekend. Come on, you whatevers. And then the post-game, fans were great and all this stuff. Because from when you engage like that, when the team's winning, I see people feel great about themselves. And then when the team's losing, they're reluctantly putting up that post, knowing that the post is a gateway to get abuse. And that's when you start to see people changing as such. So for me, that validation comes from whether a manager's picking me or not, how my peers perceive me, whether I know myself that I'm playing well, but it takes a long time to get there.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because even the manager, that's what I mean. How small does your circle need to become to stay? Or am I being naive here in the sense that is it possible to keep an even keel?
No. It's tough. I think because as well with managers, the differences between who he picks and who he doesn't sometimes can be very small. And it might be a case of the manager has just picked this person for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And then as a player, this is again me trying to be mature about it. If you're in the team and you're not playing well, you want the manager to trust you enough to allow you to get better.
Yep.
If you're out of the team and somebody's not playing well, you want the manager to pick you because the other person's not playing well.
Right.
So there's real conflict depending on which side of the fence you're on. And if you're not being picked while someone's not playing well, you get frustrated with the manager. But if you're playing while you're not playing well and the manager's giving you time, then you trust the manager so much.
If a player comes in and the group aren't feeling that guy, but it's too early a data set broadly to think that person is good or not, or working or not, would that play a big part in that that player being quickly then chucked out the door.
I think in reality, with that situation, it's more so a case of is that a good person or a bad person? Because if you've got a club which is quite settled and say there isn't lots of player turnover every like 6 months or however long it is, then in reality, the culture is kind of being set. Whether the team's good or not is a different matter, but the culture's there. If someone comes in that's against the culture, then that's when there could be a change that happens. Because playing-wise, like I find this with media as well. Like it's a big call to decide whether you think someone's out of form or you think they're no good. Because if you decide someone's no good, they can never come back from that. But if it's out of form, you give them time and give them the benefit of the doubt.
As long as you care, what do footballers actually spend all of their money on?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. I think it depends how old they are.
Make sure your missus isn't listening to
Yeah, it depends how old they are. Depends where they live.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, go on.
Because say like when you're younger.
Does it matter like first contract, second contract?
Yeah. So for me, for example, when I was coming through, my first pay packet in the youth team was £80 a week. I was a king, honestly. Walking around the streets of Manchester as a king, £80 a week. And people that were in my team, they started buying trainers. Then the 800 gets bumped up in the first pro deal to like 400, 500 if you're lucky. Yeah. At that point, you're starting to see like 4 figures in your bank account.
Yeah.
So the trainers might get a little bit more frequent purchasing. It might go to a couple of restaurants or something.
Nice.
And then it gets to a few thousands and people start getting cars. You get a bit older though, you start looking at houses. And while looking at houses, you're probably looking at things like watches and all those, like shiny things.
Yeah.
But then as you get older again, most people don't really attach themselves to the shiny things anymore. Not least of all for like, if you're in your late 20s, early 30s, you've got all your investments and stuff set up, but you've probably got like a partner, you've got kids, you've got schools to pay for, travel and all this. And for me personally, I spent most of my money on travel every summer because I wasn't really bothered about shiny things by the time I'd had my first kids. Like my eldest is 10 years old now. And I like to just travel the world. Right. So I'd rather invest it in that.
Oh, wow.
But then there's someone who I know. I'm not going to mention him. Not going to say his name just now.
I think I know who you're talking about.
No, not necessarily, because this is left field. This is left field.
Oh,
I don't think you know what I'm saying. And there was a guy who was obsessed with buying like Louboutin boots and shoes. Him and his partner.
Okay. I'm thinking of this guy.
And that's all they used to spend the money on.
I was told that this person.
Yeah.
Because my question was going to be, this person would just sort of go to Harrods or whatever it would be, I was told, and just spend out of boredom.
Yeah, people would do that. Let's put it this way into perspective. Yeah, there's someone else who I want to name him, but he's also, in fact, I'll give you little clues. I want to name him, but I can't name him because he's technically criminal. Yeah, but he's the same age as me. Okay. He played at Middlesbrough and Man City.
Wow, okay, give us some good
yeah.
gems there. Right?
But I remember a time when he was playing at City and he was renting a house. I think he was renting like Ronaldo's house after Ronaldo had left, yeah.
Right.
And this is the whole perspective about money. Because I think one of the questions that maybe we could have is like, some people get really angry about how much money people make. Other people just accept that that's what people make because it's not costing them anything to do it.
Right.
If you know what I mean. So if you can exist somewhere in the middle, like we're cool.
Yeah.
But he was spending like, and I'll be interested to see your first reaction here. It was close to £30,000 a month on rent. Yeah.
On rent.
On rent. See, so look at your instant reaction. Yeah. It's a bit like, that's a lot of money on rent.
Yeah.
So if after tax he's earning, say, 6 figures, like 100,000, then he's spending basically like a quarter of all his money on rent.
Right.
Compare that to the normal situation where somebody could be earning £1,000 a month, but they could be paying £500-600 on rent. So relatively speaking,
interesting. Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Just real quick one then, because someone did ask this. Do footballers get paid weekly or monthly?
Once a month.
Okay.
Yeah. I know it's weird that it gets talked about weekly.
A week, yeah.
Listen,
I guess it's a more exciting number, maybe.
Yeah. And to be fair, even the way contracts are like discussed now, it's in terms of everything, whether it's bonuses, everything, the cost of it throughout the whole year.
Yeah.
Again, most people don't really know that, but you don't get paid every week.
How? So in that, say, because that's a great point. So that's 30% instead of 60% of your overall earnings.
But you'll say, and listen, I understand that £30,000 on rent is one of the most unrealistic things in the history of the world.
Yeah.
But in terms of affordability for him, it's more affordable than someone that's spending half their money on rent itself.
So John's got a question here, and I've got a question off the back of it. So John Juha says, hello, mate. Sorry, I know John. How much do players talk about their contracts with other players? Will they sign? How much do they earn? And the thing I would add to that is, how much are players thinking about the sort of end game of it all? Because that 100 grand, yes, you're spending 30 grand on that. But I think I remember Robbie Savage saying that he would always put away, I think, at least 25% of his yearly wage away.
Was that his idea or was it his accountant's idea? Because remembering Robbie Savage, with all due respect,
he was on Pimp. He was on that. What was it called?
I remember him
having
that
show.
Yeah, because I had one of the old football annuals, and he had like a Range Rover in there, which had like Armani stitch in the headrest.
yeah. He did. What was it called? Not Pimp My Ride. It was like the opposite.
Cribs.
It was like Cribs.
Cribs. Yeah.
Yeah. He did Cribs.
Listen,
I remember watching
he was spending money.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was spending money, but I think
Robbie Flash. No.
Yeah, I remember. I think he was flexing his arm. He had an Armani tattoo on his arm as well.
He did have an Armani tattoo.
Yeah. The things you remember as a kid, I was like,
yeah, that's true.
It's a little bit sus.
Yeah. So like, but it always sort of stuck in my head that you've got, say, at best you've got, let's say 8 years or whatever it might be.
But you never think that while you're in there.
That was going to ask. You're not thinking about that.
No,
then?
I think you only think about the end as you're getting older.
Right.
Because. So I was lucky enough to start at 17. If you're a player that starts between like 17 and 20, can you really be thinking about the end when you look around you and you're in good health, you're getting better and you're playing? And when you're playing, people want to offer you longer term contracts. Like say, Cole Palmer's and some of these other guys, like, due to the way that the finances are set up now, they've got like 7, 8, 9, 10-year deals.
Yeah.
I doubt they're thinking that that's the end of their like career at the end of that deal. So when you put it into perspective, they know there's more to come. But money-wise, it's quite taboo to be speaking about how much you're earning, because however much you're earning doesn't necessarily give you any sort of like social clout in any particular way. Right. Like if someone knows, like Salah at Liverpool, everyone knows he's on the most money. So who's he going to talk to about how much money he's earning?
Yeah.
Like how's he going to affect, say, if Jarell Kwanzaa wants a new deal, Salah's money is insignificant.
Do you think now as well it seems so available? That knowing the amount that everyone is on.
Agents always knew though.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the thing, and your agent will then try and pitch to the club how much you think you're worth.
Is it? But it does it. I mean, naturally, there's a ranking there. Is there not?
Not necessarily.
Is there not a feeling of ranking?
There can be, but I think every case
surely
is different.
QPR when it was madness, like wasn't that one of the problems that you had such a
but
the guys who got you up and then the guys
but the QPR experience is a very, very unique one. I feel just because there were players who were in that team in the Premier League who'd come from like League Ones and so on. You'd literally been through it all. I know people walking through the door a couple of years later who'd played in Champions League finals. Like the two journeys couldn't be more different. And again, that's obviously one of the issues. But in terms of the hierarchy, pitch it this way. A kid coming through the academy that's a really good player can be in the side but earn less than a player that will come in the same position that's also like really good. The only time it changes from like an academy prospect is if they're a star. Like, this is going to be a sellable asset. This is going to be someone who's going to play for England one day. But if you're just below that, you'll always be paid less than somebody else that's in the same position.
Yeah. So
again, like the hierarchy is you're the starting midfielder for the club, but you're playing alongside a starting midfielder who they bought. So that person, even though you're playing the same amount of games and just as important, they'll be earning more than you. And if you come to the club and say, as the academy kid, I should be paid the same as this, all of a sudden perception's different because you'll start getting cold greedy.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, is it more in that sort of middle zone of 25 plus, where 25 to 30, I could imagine that being an awkward spot where you're like, I'm in my best years.
Yeah, but again...
Because I guess once you get past 30, it's 1 year...
It could be, but it depends how good you are again. Because there are people on that bell curve.
Salah problem again.
Yeah, people on that bell curve, there are people who are so elite that their age makes clubs do things differently. And there are other people who are good, and it just depends which club you're at. And I think the point I would make as well is as a player gets towards their late 20s, like, for example, Marcus Rashford now, So this next few months for him at Villa are huge because if he's not going to be staying at United going forward, the next deal he has could be the biggest deal he has between now and the end of his career.
Yep.
So he's got to make a decision about where he's going to be, how he's going to try and achieve that. And some people say, oh, well, it's not about money, this, that, and the other. And it's not. But there is a balance where you can find happiness with the way that you play, where you play, and the money you get, because it is your career.
Jack, this is B. Brownie. I'm sure little arguments happen all the time in a squad, especially after losses, etc. But did you ever see any proper fallout/beefs between two players? If you did, how did it affect the rest of the squad? That's interesting.
That is really interesting. Yeah, I've seen beefs. There was a point at QPR where...
How common are beefs?
the places that I've played in terms of like beefs, not very common.
What would you categorize a beef?
Like there are people who you don't like or whatever, you
Sure.
don't really get along with,
That's just
but
like...
you don't have to spend that much time with them.
Mhm.
You know, you'll train and so on, and it might be a bit of an edge, and it's like,
Yeah,
but it's
that's
businessy,
every
but
team.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. But then people who you like resent with a passion, that does get a bit awkward. I've had that with, you know, certain like people who just end up being like social media personalities and stuff now. I've had that. I've not backed that. I've not enjoyed that at all. But
No.
there was God,
How'd you get away from this one person?
No, not even him. No, he's
right.
for me he's relevant. But
Agree.
I've seen a point where at QPR things were so bad and there was a misunderstanding between two players to where one was sane and one was kind of insane. To where after the training session, one of them went to their boot to get like I think it was a bottle of mace and a baseball bat because it was gonna kill him. Yeah.
Wow.
And like that. Firstly, you've
preparation.
This is my point. This is my
What?
point. That's just for day-to-day life. That wasn't necessarily specific for that guy because at times they got along.
Okay.
But the beef turned into that.
Sorry, I'm more concerned. Why is there Mason and baseball bat with this dude all the time?
Just think about state of mind.
Right.
Somebody to be there.
Fair. Yeah. Wow.
You know what I mean? So I've seen that. There've been times where like people have been, you know, you hear the stories. Oh, you know, they just said, "I'll just go and fight," and they go and fight, and then they walk out and it'll be fine. That's not really beef.
Yeah, because I think this is what's interesting here is, is the male perspective in this.
Yeah.
In the sense that often, and I don't want to go too broad here, but generally blokes will like either fight or just get on with it.
Yeah.
Or like you say, don't really like you, but like I've just got to get through the day.
Yeah.
Or also call it out, because I think that's an interesting aspect. I think of changing room dynamics is that there is a general idea that you should talk it out, call it out, have that honest conversation. Yeah, but I imagine that's tougher than you'd imagine.
Yeah, that's way tougher because as well, there's the idea of like who's more important in the football club at that time. If like a star is upset with like an academy kid, yeah, picture this scenario two ways. If the star went up to an academy kid and punched him, does the star get released from the football club? If the academy kid punches a star, who's going to be losing their job there?
Yeah.
So the incident is the same, but the outcomes are very different.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of Adele Taarabt doesn't do the running,
yeah.
but you let him get away with
come
it.
On, Adele, please,
please run.
Please do run. No. Whereas someone else doesn't do the running and says, well, you're not going to play this week because you didn't do the running.
Right.
So there's a lot that goes on with that. And I think in terms of like beef as well.
Sorry, the mace and the baseball bat, I can't let that go just yet.
But I thought it was a joke when it was happening.
So it came out of the back. You saw it come out of the
bag. He
bag.
went to his car as soon as the session was finished and brought out the mace and the baseball bat.
What? And then has come back onto the training bench and go,
the other person has had to be like securely removed from the building. Otherwise, he might have died. Like that's how intense something. Like the stupid thing about football, and like anyone,
but that's blokey nonsense as well.
It's blokey nonsense, and it's blokey nonsense within football because there's so much like ego involved with certain people, and not every day can be good. And sometimes can have frustrations, and it can build up over time. Like when you think about like as a fan, how frustrated you can be with your team, and frustrated the way people are talking about you. Now imagine being on the inside, and now like this guy's from this place, that guy's from that place. I don't agree with this. He doesn't agree with that. I'm not being picked. Why is he being picked? Like, where am I going to be playing next year? He's not bothered. This is chaos, yeah. Trying to manage all that. And that's why, like, when you're winning, everybody feels like they're the same. When you're losing, you know, it's the differences with everyone about everything. And that's what led to that incident.
So, and what would you say if you were if you're managing a team and you're starting to see this kind of thing, what do you think is the best way of attempting to resolve that? Or is that impossible?
I think if a manager's really, or to be fair, not just the manager, it's the coaching staff as well, because you know it's the
they
manager.
Get free pass, don't they, coaching staff?
Yeah, it's the head coach, it's the assistants, it's the goalkeeping coach. You know, it's the medical team, it's the physios, it's the fitness coach, because everybody is hands on with the players, and if they can start to see and sense something happening, if you can deal with it earlier, then great. Because if you leave it too late, you'll never be able to move on from it.
Right.
And you can try and ask like two players or whatever to just shake hands and make up. But they don't make up. And then it gets you into that position whereby in reality, at some point, they'll need each other. will they be prepared to run the extra mile for each other? Could you say, oh, but it's your job?
Yeah.
But it's...
And it's milliseconds, isn't it? Because, like, even if it's like, I know it sounds ridiculous, but, like, even just the thought of, you get the ball, you look up, just that moment of, like, I don't really, like, ugh.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there are
then you've, like,
you're done. There are certain people who I've played with who might have thought that such and such a player isn't good, so they'd actively not try and pass to them as much as they should do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's subtle enough to where most people from the outside wouldn't notice it, but real enough where people on the inside are saying, come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on, let's do this. But they won't budge because that's their initial thought.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a nonsense. So then imagine that if there's beef, because that's just based on ability. So imagine if you don't like the person.
Yeah.
Are you going to be communicating? Obviously, on every word you pass on to someone in a game which is full of communication, it hurts you that little bit more. You know what I mean?
In terms of those, like the fisticuff thing, like the pushing, or, you know, like blokes do, especially on a football pitch. How many, like, what would you say is, like, over your career, what was, like, how often did that happen? Even if it wasn't the biggest
As in
deals.
the soft stuff or, like, the harder stuff?
You know, like the pushing nonsense, or like no baseball bats.
Multiple times a season in training, like in games.
And
like
that's not always,
regular.
is that always, would you always feel like that's a bad thing? Or do you
Not
think
necessarily.
sometimes, yeah.
Not necessarily. Like, I'm not one of those guys that, like, advocates for it and says people, just go and fight, because in reality, you never know what's going to happen. Like, you know, something bad could legitimately happen if someone gets held or hit the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not necessarily for that. I want people to try and address things. And some old school managers say, just go and fight. Just go and fight. You know what I mean? But it's because they're just into watching people fight, I guess.
Right, yeah, that's
But in terms of the general on the pitch stuff, like, again, people going through so many different things. Like, for example, one of the toughest places to manage, say you do a training session the day after a game in some places, and the people who do the training session are the ones who haven't played. So everybody's got a frustration.
Mm-hmm.
They might have been upset that they didn't play long enough the day before. The manager's upsetting them, but they've not spoken to the manager. But this is like a week's worth, this is 2 weeks worth, this is a month's worth, this is a season's worth.
Yeah.
So you go into the training pitch, you're not looking forward to the session you have to do. And then somebody who's in a different position trying to prove that I should play, like, what happens if he, like, fouls him? It's a bad foul. No intent. That person that's already frustrated, switch goes, and now they're up and they're aggro. And in that moment, the other person might not be ready for it, but you've got to show fight as well. And then,
there's a Lord of the Flies element to this.
And then the person that's now angry, well, his best mate's behind him. What's he doing? Is he backing it, or is he going to come up and try and pull him off? And then this chaos, like, it's like
so complex, man.
It is, honestly, it's so complex. And then as you, I remember, I'll shout out to Massimo Alongo, so he's a good friend of mine. So when he was at QPR, there's a point where he was having a bad day or something. And so he's like, this isn't usually like Mass. Mass is such a cool, chill guy. Mm-hmm. He started kicking, I think it was Mide Shadipo. I think that's who it was. He was either him or...
So he's a right winger? Right winger for QPR.
Yeah. But like, basically, at that time, Mide was like coming through the academy.
Yeah.
And Mass was getting angry. He was like kicking him. And like, Mass, calm down, man. But Mass was like having a day. I mean, everyone has bad days.
Yeah, sure.
He was kicking him. So as captain, I needed to calm him down. But the way I calmed him down, I remember, like, he was looking at me now. I don't know if he still respects it to this day, but I grabbed him by, like, the chest here.
Uh-huh.
I was looking at him. I said, calm down. He's like trying to get up and all.
I would calm down.
I'm like, Mass, calm down. And he was really, really angry, but he couldn't move anywhere.
Right.
And I think in that moment, like, it's the most dominance I'd ever asserted to another teammate.
Yeah.
But it was needed because he was just being a clown now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, if you can be frustrated, fine. But if you turn into a clown, like, we can't do that.
Yeah, you kind of let yourself down.
And I don't know if Massey even remembers that, but I remember it clear as day because I felt like I had total control of him.
I believe you.
I was like, Mass, calm down. Like, I wasn't angry. I'm like, calm down, Mass. You know?
Okay, enough.
Yeah, exactly. But those people have bad days, so as a consequence, it leads to those moments.
But that's leads to resolution where it's like, I'm here with you.
Yeah.
We're here together. Yeah. But you can't behave like this.
And some people want to, like, show their frustration in different ways. But for me, you can't do it by...
That's face on. That's not snide.
Yeah.
So there's power in that.
Yeah. And there's so much to it because it's like people, the way you respond to certain moments dictates what it's kind of dictated by, like, do you like that person or not?
Yeah.
You know
because the grace you will afford them.
100%. If that's your guy, if that's your boy, is that your close one, and they're in a beef, you're sprinting in. Mm-hmm. Prime example, with all due respect, though I don't need to respect him. In 2012, the game between QPR and Man City, as somebody got sent off, if you look back at the video, look at how many people running to support him versus people just left him.
Yeah.
Just make of that whatever you will.
Yeah, well, I think
but yeah.
Anyway, ask about, this is from Charizard Listen. Ask about supplements, painkillers, doping. What do players get? Do they know? Where are the boundaries when it comes to painkillers and things like that? There's been a lot more talk. Dele Alli spoke about it. And then what you start to see is people chucking out, or maybe like attributing bad form to ailments that they don't know if it's right or not. But one thing that I think is quite interesting is say like sleeping pills, because again, I think the difficulty I'd imagine, like I played like lower semi-pro, right? And you play a game under the lights in front of 40 people.
It's still a game at night time. It's fine.
But I'd get home and I just
couldn't sleep. Yeah.
So as much as it's painkillers, which I'm fascinated by that, and the doping element, like the sleep thing, I think I'm intrigued by that as well.
Yeah, night playing. My best case scenario for a game of football is an early kickoff, and then you've got the day to like wind down, and you can just be like a normal person come evening time.
Nice.
Worst case scenario is literally a nighttime game where you've had to spend the whole day getting ready for it. Then it comes around, and like you imagine you lose, and you can't sleep, your body hurts.
Or like I was thinking, so that time I saw Jimmy Dunn, they'd beaten I can't remember if it was Plymouth or Hull City away. So he got back in at like get back in at 3.
Yeah, so those bus journeys at QPR, mate, wow,
horrific. Yeah,
but
so let's work. Like, okay, first of all, supplements and that kind of
supplements
thing.
tend to be given to you. There are some people where in the last say 15 years. It's actually quite cool now to try hard. So some people would be, you know what I mean? Like previously, you'd get called busy.
Yeah.
These days, it's like, you're trying to find the extra 1%.
Okay.
The issue comes because this information now as well could be coming. There'll be someone reaching out to you on social media. I work for this company. I do this. Or my friend does that, does whatever. And Pavel Schwalek used to play for QPR.
Yep.
So he played international football with Lewandowski. So Lewandowski's like doctor and so on would give him loads of supplements, and so Pavel was always having something. It's this vitamin.
He did have stamina,
mate. That's what I mean. Yeah. So you're like putting the two together. It's like, what is this? And it's it's Lewandowski as well. So
yeah.
Using all that, So people are constantly having it, but where some players go wrong is they do stuff without checking first with their physios, with their doctors. And you are supposed to be self-sufficient to where you can look on, I think it's the Global Draw website, to see whether something's legal or not.
Okay.
But when we're talking about humanity and we're talking about football humanity, most people aren't necessarily engaged to understand the importance of that. But very rarely do they take something that's that risky. And we do see the occasional case of it, say with like Torres and diuretics and so on. But people try and get anything that they can to help them get better. And for the doctors at the clubs, you take your blood test at the start of the year. These are the things you're deficient in. All of a sudden, you're getting this vitamin D throughout the year. You're getting this, it's zinc, it's that, it's whatever. So you get given stuff. And if you get given stuff from the club, it's not you that's liable anymore.
Right.
So people push for stuff from that standpoint. And not everyone takes that type of thing. But for those that want to, or a club that has like a standard where that's a thing, then it's all legit.
So doping, a little bit, but drugs with that. There's been again, these sort of rumours that would come out. It would be that sort of players would sort of be injured for a certain amount of time. I don't want to get you in any kind of trouble here, but is that something that you've heard of, that the player will just kind of, they've done something on a night out or done something to try and enhance it?
Not possible.
No.
The reason it's not possible is the same way with like track and field, People will get caught, and the reason you get caught is from, I think again, it's the second half of my career, they started doing whereabouts. So have you heard about any of this? So back in the day, like a drug tester might come in on a Wednesday or whatever. And in fact, no, it's still the same. So let me try and address this properly. Drug tests are random, and when they come to your club, the people they pick, unless there's somebody who has to be checked because of a previous like ban or whatever, it's random, But on days, for example, from Monday through Saturday, the club will list everybody that's training, everyone that's going to be in. And so if the drug test is coming on a Tuesday, here's a list of everybody that's going to be in. let's do it at random. This person's going to do a test, so on and so forth. Yeah, but it could happen any day. But if you're somebody that's not going to be in, you have to do your whereabouts.
Right.
So you've got to say an hour. I think it's either an hour or 2 hours within the day of where you're going to be.
Okay.
Because you could be randomly drug tested as well on that day.
Got you.
So you can't escape the cycle of being available to be tested.
Okay.
So if somebody, say, is playing 1 week and they maybe do something, then they say they're going to be ill. The fact is, if they're at the training ground, they're still up to be able to be tested. And even if they're not, you have to do your whereabouts. Because if you don't do your whereabouts, do that hour thing, you get a strike. You get 3 strikes, you get a ban.
Oh, okay.
So as far as drug testing goes within, say, professional sport, firstly, like for most, they'd probably declare that it's pointless because, you could maybe take this drug that enhances your aerobic performance, but if you can't kick a ball, all of a sudden you're still not going to be playing, and the gains you can make, they're so like marginal.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
So drugs within football aren't a big deal. I think clubs.
See, because everyone thinks that they are.
No, not even close. In track and field, to where like the difference between you earning $1 million and you earning like 100,000 is a tenth of a second in a sprint.
Yeah,
I get that. But when it comes down to
quite a closed skill, I guess.
Yeah, and like 1% is enormous.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of football, you could maybe do stuff that will help you. That could help you recover. But they'd rather do that through strategies in terms of, say, the running you might do the day after a game, the protein shakes and stuff that you have. But yeah, you can't escape the cycle of being drugs tested. And sometimes at QPR, I think it's just because of the location. Like they were there all the time, mate.
Really?
All the time, and it's aggressive and to the point where it's not soft. Like when I was in America, I found this a bit nuts. Because in the UK, I was somebody who wouldn't take anything because I knew that like discomfort's discomfort. I'll try my best or whatever. I didn't really take painkillers or anything. But I thought if I make a mistake here, that's 4 years. That's a career done.
Yeah.
So I'd rather be suffering and have nothing than even have the chance to have anything in me. But in America, when I went, it might have changed now in MLS, but they take 2 drug tests a year and they know when they're coming.
Right.
And it's gonna be March and it's gonna be one in October.
Okay.
And then given it's America, as you go throughout the states, some states are legal for marijuana and stuff like that. Some places aren't. And I had teammates who were excited to go to like Washington State so they could get some weed, smoke and do whatever.
Right, man.
Because at first they knew they weren't going to be tested for a long time.
Yeah.
And the only time it varied is like if they were international players.
Right.
But otherwise, that's the culture.
Mm.
And also over there, like the league is so controlling with it that say if you do fail a drug test, depending on what it is, you might be out for like. There's a guy who got caught for steroids in 2019, guy from Seattle, and he had a 10-week ban for steroids. Yeah. I was like, this feels a bit sus to me. Then he came back in and scored in the playoffs and his team made it to the final. So I was like, no, I'm not having this. But whereas in the UK and around the world, it's different. But you can't escape drug tests. So nobody's doing that. Nobody. And if they do, they will get caught.
Painkillers.
Painkillers are a thing in football.
Yeah.
Through my time, a big thing in football. And I think lots of players, as you start off as a young person, you don't really see that. Like in academy football, it's not really a thing. They're not trying to encourage you to have that sort of thing. And you as a player don't go up to a physio and say, I need this.
Right.
When you enter the sort of like pro ranks, you've got people with different experiences within their careers, people who've got different ailments and so on, people who've got like chronic injuries and such.
Superstitions too?
For some, maybe.
Yeah.
But then you could also argue, in this case, it's addiction.
Yeah.
There's an interesting balance and it depends on who's doing it as such.
Mm-hmm.
But some people would be keen to have them before a game. But because we're not in their body, we don't know whether they're doing it because they need it to get through a game or they're doing it because that's what they do.
Yeah.
It's the same, like some people, say Jordan Pickford's, Vardy's, people like that, like they have to have a Red Bull before a game.
Yeah. Or is snus a thing for you?
Well, this is a good one actually.
It's I can't escape it now. Like you're just walking around, Blake's just doing this all the time.
When I was younger, the first time I saw snus was when we had a Swedish goalkeeper at City, Andreas Isaksson. Used to be. See the way I said Isaksson?
Yeah, really good.
I know, man. Shout out to Isak, man. He's a good guy. Good guy. Massive fella he was. 1.99
That's
massive. Bigger than Christmas he was. But he used to have two up in his lip. And I was like, what is that? Two. But he's like full Scandi though.
Yeah.
So that's regular for him. But at that time, only the Scandinavian players had it, and they might offer some to people every so often.
You give it a go, yeah.
Yeah,
because you could.
I've done it. I did it twice in my life, yeah, and it was at both at Christmas parties actually. But he'd
Did
have
you like it? I hate it.
Nah, it's
It made
weird.
me feel sick.
It's that rush of like nicotine.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell is this? Why is my body telling me I'm in a fight? I'm sitting down. Why am I in a fight? But anyway.
Yeah, totally. I was like hot.
Exactly.
Same.
That's what I mean. Your body's like, whoa. Pull up.
Yeah,
Something's happening.
Get out.
But he had it. And at the time, most people couldn't get it unless you imported it. So it was quite a niche industry at that point.
Yeah.
And this wasn't the point where social media was quite big, so you didn't really know what other clubs were doing. So unless you had a player who knew a Scandinavian player, you've probably never seen it before.
Right.
You couldn't get it, couldn't see it.
Right.
Then as time passed, start to see loads of these like obscure Instagram pages popping up saying, "Oh, Snuff's delivered" and all this. So more and more people started to have it, and then it's people not just from Scandinavia, and then before you know, it's just slammed up people's lips. And
it's everywhere.
This things that I don't like personally. Like people can do it, whatever. You're free, do whatever you want. I don't like the smell of it. I don't like the fact that for some people, like who I played with specifically at QPR, they just leave it on the floor afterwards.
Mate, urinals. Like I can't I can't have a wee anymore without seeing these little
I don't know if
bits
they're doing it as a bit, but it gets honestly
I'm annoyed.
ticks me off, yeah.
Yeah.
And also for some now, some of it is like it's trendy. It became trendy and people started doing it. But like, what's the real benefit in doing it? Because now for some people, they're addicted to where they have to have it in all the time, and they're not even aware that they're doing it anymore. And that's when I think like you didn't need to get here.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Also, like, I guess like being able to do a powerful one. There's like
they're not bothered about it. There's not even that discussion anymore. From back in the day, it was like, oh, this is the Siberian one or whatever.
yeah. Well, it was Siberian.
Yeah, but now it's just like they just have it and it's just in. It's just in, then it's out, and then you know it's around because you just smell it for a second, then it's gone. And I don't know how it affects them, but then as well as it being with players,
I get confused by it in the sense of like it's supposed to be you're supposed to be focused more, but also chilled more. That's what I'm struggling with.
I think it's just reached the point to where like in two things. The first one is like it's not just players anymore because I've seen it with players' partners and friends and people away from football.
Right.
Because the football, as I saw it, was the genesis of it.
Yeah.
But then the other side is, I say, it's the dependency to where they put it in. It doesn't make a difference anymore. But the only difference is when they don't have it in.
Yeah.
So from a performance standpoint, they have to have it.
I think it's this generation's vapor rub.
I'll tell you what. Do you know what? That's a respectable shout.
Yeah,
I'll give you that.
I'll give you
that, yeah.
Did you play with Vieira?
I did, yeah.
Was he still doing it then?
Yeah, he was.
He loved it, didn't he?
Yeah, I'll be honest though, it's Patrick Vieira, man, can do what he
wants.
Yeah, I got a lot of time for Patrick. What a smooth guy.
Yeah, man. Yeah, crazy. What's it like being in a dressing room when everyone knows the manager could get sacked? This is certainly one that you will have experienced.
Listen, as somebody who's had 15 managers, I think in 16
15?
years. In fact, it might be maybe a couple less than that.
Can you feel like? I guess how far can you feel the writings on the wall?
These days, it's probably easier to feel because everyone's telling you that the manager's under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're having like open discussions and not just in like message forums anymore. It's just like, here's the news, Sky Sports News, somebody outside the stadium, this manager's under pressure.
Yeah. I also think there's a broad understanding that a manager will not resign because that's stupid.
Yeah.
Because you're going to miss out on your payoff.
100%.
So I totally
but then also, why would a manager resign in general? Because
I just guess if it gets to a point where like this is like, I would imagine it feels almost humiliating a little bit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe. But ego is, why would you ever take another job from that standpoint? Because a manager will always have belief that they can be the best thing for whichever situation they go to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And some of the jobs that are available, they are car crashes. And someone goes in thinking they can fix it.
That's true.
And like when it's not going well, same as a player. If you're not playing well, you don't think you're a bad player. You think you're not playing well. So you can try and find a way to get better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it takes a lot for you to declare that you're not good enough for a situation.
I think that maybe that's where our mindsets are slightly
Yeah, just like, think of it then, from a manager or player perspective. Why would you ever think that you can't do something?
Because I think, I guess you
could be sick of the owners. That's one thing. You could be sick of, like, certain bits.
Oh, surely you have doubts of, are you good enough?
No. Because as a manager, the difference is you can start doubting whether the players are good enough.
Right.
That's the history. Yeah. That's the history of managers who've got security saying players aren't good enough and replacing them.
Right.
You know, obviously you can work the other way with like a manager losing their job or something because they don't fit. But I've seen Monday through Friday, managers set teams up marvelously. Yeah. And then when a Saturday comes, players might just not do what the manager's asked of them. And it'll fall on their head, but the manager doesn't think my plan was wrong. he knows that it wasn't executed to a chance to where it could have been given a chance.
So that's one we've got here. Joe W says, have you seen a teammate intentionally ignore a manager's instructions on the pitch?
Yes. Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Like, is that wildly common?
No, it's not wildly common because most players now, in fact, I'd say 99% of players, like, they can have opinions about stuff. But in reality, your job is to sort of give the manager's plan the best opportunity to be successful. And if you're in the starting 11, you're actually one of the privileged ones because there are 11 people that aren't. So if you're going to come in and just mess about, like, the manager could, in theory, just take you out.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. So when a team is struggling, like let's say Everton being too functional under Sean Dyche, or Tottenham being the other side of it, that idea that, like, maybe just kick it away, like for Postecoglou's teams, those players know you have to stick to it, even if you disagree.
I'm glad you said that. Because I've yet to see a manager drop a player because in the 44th minute of the game they kicked a ball away. You get what I mean?
I've noticed Steve Cook, QPR centre back, after 40 minutes.
Close it off.
Whack.
Close it off. Yeah.
Just whack. Rid of it.
You're not going to get told off for that because it's situational. And the manager themselves, they've got their ideas of principles, but when it comes down to winning games of football, in the best case scenario, you win it according to how he's asked you to play. But as you are on the field, the manager's not next to you telling you where to go like he would be on the training pitch.
Yeah.
Those are the decisions that you should make.
Yeah.
I think if anything, the better players will understand a manager's plan and play the game. I think average to worst players will take things too literally.
Right.
That's my concern.
Yeah.
And because of that, like, I remember being in the seat before and people saying, like, some of the creativity's left because players are doing this, that, and the other. I don't think the players have, because some of the stuff that we see, that's the best stuff we see from individuals, isn't because the manager's told them to do that. It's because they've had a feel for a game.
Yeah.
So in terms of sabotage, 2014, we've just been promoted, I think, from the playoffs to QPR, and we are in Ireland for pre-season. And Harry Redknapp's manager brought in Rio Ferdinand. And Rio, like, it's not his best, like, 6-9 months. It's not.
In several ways.
Yeah, like, it's tough on so many different levels. But he was brought in to play in the middle of a back three.
Yes, I remember. Yeah, and did the first game, didn't it, against Hull?
Well, I think it Hull. It might have been. I feel like it might have been Spurs away.
Spurs away is maybe one of the second games. I remember Hull. The reason I remember it is because it was we lost 1-0. James Chester scored a goal, and a match of the day they dug out Rio for not marking him. Yet he'd actually played. We'd played all right, and he'd played really well there.
Yeah.
But then I went to Spurs away because I hadn't been to Spurs away before, and that was
great. So I think we're in Ireland for this pre-season, and Harry Redknapp, the manager, the plan maker, says we're going to play this formation. It's going to be 3-4-3. Ironically, we're back here again. Right. Football goes in cycles, and the reason he said he wants
to World Cup, wasn't it?
Yeah. And the reason he wants to do it is because he wants to have the opportunity to play 2 10s. Literally, we're right here again. Yeah.
Wow.
There's so much stuff I can tell you about football. Sort of similarities, because, like, Ian Holloway's one, honestly, his mind. Anyway,
I love Ollie. We should get him on.
Oh, he'd be brilliant. He's such a nice guy. Yeah. So we're going to play 3-4-3, and it's going to be 2 10s. And what I like about back threes is it actually allows you to have more attacking players. Some people think of a 3 as a 5, but if you get it right, it's just 3.
Yep.
And you can have more, as I say, more attacking players and so on. And after he gave the talk about what we're going to do, someone in the team said it's not going to work. Yeah. And then Harry's like, well, yeah, it's going to work. But someone said it's not going to work. Someone playing midfield in the team said it's not going to work. Yeah. And so proceeded to basically sabotage it every day in training for the whole of pre-season, to where that starting team lost pretty much 80 to 90% of all the games that were played in that spell on the training pitch.
Until we quit on it, didn't we?
Exactly. Quit on it as early as possible and went back to a formation which we were more familiar with. And that's because that person had such a strong will about it that he just wasn't having it. You know what I mean? And if you go out there, like, there are certain things as a player, like, you might not like something, but if we all do it together, then there's a chance it might work.
Yeah.
If you decide to go off piste and just, this is me, I'm doing my own thing, that's not going to work.
Yeah, if you're on the same page, that gives you an opportunity to have answers.
Exactly, and you could hate it. You could hate it.
Yeah.
But if you win, who cares?
Yeah. And also that season, recruitment was based around that. Like 100%. In terms of the fullbacks 100%. As well.
100%.
What's the biggest lie footballers tell in interviews to avoid controversy? What's one that we can?
I'll get a little bit spicy with this. Yeah,
Oh.
I'll get a little bit spicy with this.
Oh, nice.
So one of the problems with like being a player going out to do media, especially before a game, is that you can't really say anything because you don't want to inspire the opposition. Yeah,
right.
That whole idea of like bulletin board material. Yeah. Such and such a player has said this. We're going to go and show them because games are hard enough anyway. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If you encourage the opposition, then you should make it harder. That's like.
So that's why Pep's always just being.
That's why everyone's always lovey-dovey, yeah, always. And the biggest lie is when a player or a manager says a team that hasn't won in a while is still a really good team, because in reality they're not. You know what I mean? Everyone outside of the bubble has said, like at this moment, Southampton are the team that getting it. Right, you know what I mean? Yeah,
sure.
Everyone outside of their fan base who doesn't see them very often just sees the results and says, "Oh, they're no good. They're no good. They're no good. They're no good." Even though I'm rooting for them to get another couple of points, by the way. I want it to break the record of worst ever.
Yeah,
for several reasons. But like everyone acknowledges that Southampton are likely to lose games of football because that's consistently what they've done from start to finish. But whomever they're playing this weekend, the manager or the players from the opposition will say, yeah, they're fighting for their lives. They're a good team.
Yeah.
They're going to do this. They're going to do that. When in reality, the game's probably going to finish with that team losing, because whether it's the form, whether it's the talent, whether it's just the nature of the game itself, more often than not, that team loses.
Yeah, you just don't want to poke the bear, do you?
Yeah, exactly. And it might be poking a teddy bear, but still, like, why even bother sounding disrespectful?
What's post-match?
Yeah.
What percentage? And let's take out. I'm saying this. Let's take Harry Redknapp out of this conversation for a second, okay?
Thank you.
What percentage of a manager's answers in a press conference post-match would you say are actually how they feel?
Oh, wow. That's a good question, and I think every manager is in some ways different. But I think when a manager is more honest is when the person asking them the question almost gives them a canvas to talk about what they want, as opposed to be led by individual or collective narrative against them or for them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Wow. Because a manager has watched the game in a different way to how we watch a game. Like, if you ever get a chance to be at a stadium and look at a manager, the ball could be on the far right-hand side and the manager's looking left, because they're looking for lots of little details that they've been working on. General feel of things. Like, they've got a different understanding of every goal that's scored, every goal that's conceded, general flow of a game. Did the team play how they wanted? Did they not? So they're thinking about it on a different level, and they've also looking around, seeing the bench. How can this player impact this? How can we affect the flow of things?
Do you know what I find bizarre? Is if I was a manager, I wouldn't want to stand there.
Why? You want to be higher to see it? I know, but if you go higher, people say you don't care.
It's so weird that though.
It's a trap. It's honestly a trap. Yeah. You know what I mean? But yeah, a manager.
I guess you've got to be with everyone. There's a communication problem.
100%, 100%. But like, if you see it, if you can see something from up high, like the higher you go in the stadium, the more you clearly can see things, because you get the opportunity to see 22 players.
Exactly.
But it depends, as I say, the nature of the questioning, because a lot of the times they have to go out there almost like as a night watchman and just like be able to go home. And having worked on this side of it now, like if I get a chance to speak with a manager after a game, I'm one of 8 people that has to speak to them. Imagine the general question fatigue as the interviews go on and on and on and on, and you had the raw emotion of the incident.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if you as a fan had to do an interview straight after a game.
Well, that's what I mean. That was a whole era.
Yeah,
well, still is.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true.
It's still used.
But then I think what some people mess up with as well. There's a point where what's his name now? Timo Werner. He got taken off against Rangers in a Europa League game a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago now, and Postecoglou said that he wasn't up to the standard and so on in the press conference and stuff afterwards, and it was in some ways linked to a question, and someone's like, "Oh, how'd you recover from that? If you're Werner, the manager calling you out like that?" Postecoglou is like many managers, whereby the first discussion they have is with the players after the game. Timo Werner getting dragged at halftime is a statement in itself.
Yeah.
What the manager said to him to drag him at halftime is probably a bigger, more aggressive statement. And Timo Werner after the game is probably not saying, "I wonder what the manager's going to say about me now." But we're so nicey on this side. It's like, "Oh, I'd be so upset if you said that about me."
Will a player listen to every bit from their manager.
I'd say most players don't listen to any bit of it.
Really?
I think the only time they catch any of it realistically is if they're watching like something like Sky Sports News or whatever. But in reality,
or if it gets back to them because it's about them.
Exactly. But in reality, it's like it's too close to home. Like you don't really care about that. Like the manager's literally prepared you for the week. You know what the tactics were. You know what he said as a team talk before the game. What he said at halftime. What he said after. Why do I need to check and see what he's saying now?
Here's one I've always wondered. Is like, you know, like Postecoglou was talking about, he said these guys have been working Thursday, Sunday, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, and what they've done is outstanding. How would you like it if your manager comes into the change room, absolutely hammers you
after the game?
Yeah, absolutely hammers you, going, you lot are a disgrace, blah blah blah, and then walks out and says they're giving everything. Has that happened to you? And what was your did you actually like that? Do you know what I mean? I could imagine go, actually, he's looking out.
I think as you get older, your perspective on that kind of changes because you start to understand what managers have to do. Like the more games you're involved in, the more you understand the inner workings of it. If you're a young person, you're probably trying to pay attention to more. As you get older, you realize you pay attention to what matters.
Yeah. And I guess do your buttons get pushed more as you get older or less as you get older?
By what managers say?
Yeah.
I think you're more so led by the actions because a manager can say something, but you can aggressively go and knock on their door and demand like a conversation, and the manager will always.
How often would you do that?
Not very often because I'm not really bothered like that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I found there are different types of manager, and I try to help certain people with this. Like some managers have an open door policy and they mean it. Some managers say they mean it and they don't want you to knock on their door. So sometimes you knocking on the door, especially if your status is like a funny one within the club, plays against you. Because sometimes don't think about how the meeting has gone. Think about what they're thinking as you're walking out of their room. Because if they're thinking
that's more important than the
this guy is a clown, you know what I mean? If a manager ever thinks, who does this guy think he is?
You're in trouble.
Hey, you're in hell, all right? You're in hell. So yeah, I'd say that.
A couple of quick ones then to finish off. Is it this? I'm not going to say the. It's got a funny name. Second half's Paddy. Is it possible for a home team to bug the dressing room of the away team to hear their halftime team talk? I'm sure it doesn't happen, but is it even possible?
I think if you want to see halftime team talks, just go on like YouTube, CSE Dons, UTR, people like that, because you're not going to be getting it flipping at pro level like that. If you were doing that, you got found out. Like it's huge controversy to start with, but then secondly, like why do you need to know? You know what I mean?
I guess where it's like little tactical changes, maybe.
But you'll see if you're clued into football, you know, people like yourself and others, like you literally on a weekend, you're doing like breakdowns of things which you saw within a game itself.
Yeah,
and you're seeing that in real time. Mm-hmm. If you need to have the inside info at half time to say that all of a sudden the right back, I think the right back's going to be going to left back, and lo and behold, the game kicks off. Oh, weird, the right back's gone to left back.
Yeah, it's actually more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah, exactly. That's true desperation. I know there was that controversy recently with I think the Canadian women's national team. I used to fly drones and stuff to see like set pieces and tactics. Like I think the manager got banned or whatever. Like that level of detail is just not that deep.
Do you know what I was thinking recently? Was like, so generally, I think Carragher said something about the first 5 minutes of a game, you're not really watching the game. You're watching the setup and the sort of changes of in possession to out possession and how players are maybe moving about, the sort of pressing patterns, whatever. I was thinking that I don't think it would do that much damage, all being well, if you put out almost the wrong team first. Play for 5 minutes.
Interesting.
And then tweak to what you want.
To be honest, to push back against that a little bit, like, you wouldn't want to structurally put yourself in a position to where you might hinder your chances of winning the game because you can still score a goal in the first minute or whatever, as we see. But what some teams do, like in warm-ups, sometimes we'd like be doing, if we're in a back three, we'd be doing like back four work.
That happened last week, the League Cup semi-final. They Lewis Hall's supposedly playing in midfield when they were doing stuff. And they had a back four, and then all of a sudden...
It's funny, because certain things like that, people want to like obsess about what does the warm-up look like, But the game's the game, you know what I mean? And I was going to say, there was another point to that, yeah. So, in some ways, you do play a different game anyway, because from back in the day, and to a certain extent now, you establish yourself in the game by forcing the opposition to turn and run back towards their goal. So some teams will be more direct in the first 5 minutes, but in reality, they're doing that to be able to play in the next 40.
That makes sense. Right, last one. Kieran McBrien said, Frank Lampard once spoke on the overlap about having to adapt to not having the regular dose of adrenaline dopamine that comes with playing weekly in front of 30,000 or whatever it might be. How did you adapt to this change after retiring?
Ooh. How did I adapt? As I was progressing through my career, like my career is basically split in two because there's the half when my mum was alive and the half after she'd passed. So the first half, it was like the most joyous thing in the world. The second half, it kind of felt more like a job at times, especially because that was almost like the beginning of the QPR experience, which was for the first few years was toil. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's toil in a new place. Before that, it was like I was at home in Manchester playing for the team that I supported. Family was all there. Like I was free. I didn't appreciate how good I had it until I didn't have it anymore. But from there, like I used to love training and games. Then I used to just love training because it was more variable.
Okay.
If your team's doing well, you love games as well. But if team's not doing well, I'll be perfectly honest with you. At QPR for a spell when we weren't doing well, the drive from where I lived out in Surrey way towards the stadium wasn't a fun drive. There's always so much traffic. There's almost like this sense of doom and gloom as soon as you get even close to like Hammersmith.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's like,
where did you live?
Initially, I lived in Claygate.
Oh yeah,
next to Isha, but initially I was in St Margaret's.
Oh, okay.
So that's when vibes were good.
Right.
When I was in St Margaret's, chilling.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's right.
I'm right by St Margaret's now.
There's no dramas whatsoever. But then, like, it's a 40-minute journey to an hour, and when you're doing well, it's great. When it's not so well, man, it's long.
Yeah.
You get there, and the times when I'm not playing, times when I'm like at the time, I'd hated Harry Redknapp for a spell. You know what I mean? So I was unhappy with that.
Yeah.
Wasn't playing, team was losing. I was getting the neck from everyone. It's annoying because when you get the neck from everyone, it's like you don't really know me. You don't like I'm trying as hard as I can. People telling me that I'm not. Like I'm enjoying this. I'm just here for the money ball. It's not the case. But anyway.
So just to go full circle, if you're advising footballers now, would you advise them to? It sounds like a negative way of phrasing it, but would you advise them to shut out or to be, or to try and be as open as possible in terms
about
of
your emotions?
In terms of like the whole concoction of being a professional footballer with the noise, the politics within, without, the team dynamics, like all of it. I think there's so many little trauma points that you have to like flinch and take.
Yeah, I think for today, for today's world, I'd recommend people as early as possible to get a grip of how they want to be perceived, because you can do it in different ways now. Because say, for example, as a young person, maybe there's benefit of like, you know, you're doing a YouTube video with Chunks or like Angry Ginger or something. People can see that you're actually a human being.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And for some, don't get me wrong, like it's always going to be led by if you're playing well, if your team's winning, because then you get this feeling of like anxiety. Well, I can't be perceived to be having fun if my team's not winning.
Right.
Which is insane, by the way, given the fact that like you actually have a life as well.
Yeah, and is not a remedy.
Yeah, 100%. It's like this own separate thing.
That's mad, yeah.
But then in terms of like that dopamine fix, for some, in fact, for me, the only thing I miss in terms of not playing anymore is walking out into an arena and seeing thousands of people there to watch you. That initial feeling. Because then when it comes down to the game itself, a game of football is a game of football. The standards and the faces and the sort of like value of a game might vary, but it's still on a pitch, still 11 versus 11, still trying to score in the same size goals. But like I say, coming out, especially sometimes like under the lights, you know, the crowds are like that's a real thrill. But I did it hundreds of times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so for me, I don't struggle with that. For Frank and others, maybe that's why they stay in football for longer as coaches, as managers and so on. But I've tasted it and I feel privileged to have tasted it. And the other things I get now, it's a fix from just playing general football. But I look back and I remember and I celebrate and remember the moments, like say winning at Wembley when Bobby scored. I saw 40,000 people jump up in this place where I used to take Wembley for granted till I realised I'd never played there. Then I get a chance to play there, and it's like, yeah, man,
this is different.
This is it, yeah. So,
amazing, man.
Yeah,
well, look, there we go, guys. If you enjoyed this one, then Nedum's going to be joining us once a month. So follow the podcast, share the podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll speak to you soon.